And we're here for Spiritual Bites again. Good morning, Asha. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's so lovely to be able to connect every week and connect with your beautiful tribe.
Yeah. It's been perfect, hasn't it? That we all work so really well together. And in saying that, here we are. It's when Nicolette and I decided we were going to do this. We were discussing it and we're saying that be lovely to just have a guest on every so often and do whatever we want with it. And one of the things is that if one of us couldn't make it, then the other one would be hosting it and all of that sort of stuff. Well, Nicolette couldn't make it today, so it's perfect timing that I've got you, that we can sort of unpack things and have a discussion about various topics. So it's been lovely.
Yeah, well, it's they're big shoes to fill, but hopefully there's I've got a pair of my own, so
yeah.
It's always lovely to connect, and I'm sure Nicolette will be weighing in at some point and giving us her insights as well.
Well, we're talking about a really interesting topic this time, right? Because spiritual traps, as Nicolette said when we were discussing it last week, it's something that, there's quite a few, there's a lengthy discussion that can happen from that process, right? Because there's so many different traps that can happen when you're, going through a spiritual process. So, good morning, Helen. I can see that we've got Helen on here. Lovely to have you here. And if anyone else is on here, because I can see we've got a few different people on here, would love for you to jump on and say hi to us. So it's me and Asha today. And we're going to be talking, good morning, Irene. We've got some of our regular beautiful women watching us, which is lovely. And so today we're going to be talking about, spiritual traps and how, especially, like when I first started spirituality, when I first, woke up spiritually, there were so many do's and don'ts. And, I feel that I've watched spirituality evolve in its own process, like as we've evolved and understood ourselves more as a society or as humans. But what's your take on your spiritual journey, Asha, and spiritual traps in general, I suppose?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's such a large topic, and it's one that I think is really worthwhile setting from the outset, because anything that has evolved through humans is obviously going to have the human biases as we go. And I think one of the big traps when people start to open up to their spirit is the idea that everything is going to be virtuous or somehow easy or come into plain sight, and that suddenly everything else is just going to melt away.
It's just going to flow, and our life will be grand. And if it's not, you're doing something wrong.
That's right. And so one of my very, very dear girlfriends went through a really traumatic time and found herself on this kind of new path. And I was outside actually looking at the clouds at the time, and I was having a little bit of a giggle. I don't know whether you guys used to do it or not, but make patterns in the clouds.
Yeah.
And
there were, all the time.
Yeah. And there were these two clouds, and one looked like kind of a figure dressed in robes and being pulled by the collar along. And the other one looked like it was kind of being compelled by like the chest and being pulled that way. And when I connected with my girlfriend, she was kind of saying like, Ash, like, I don't want this, this is not what I had envisioned for myself. And she definitely had the feeling that the universe was kind of dragging her by the collar. And I was fortunate enough to have gone through enough of my journey to feel connected to that heart space and what am I being magnetized towards. And I just said to her, you know, her name is also Ash. She's Ashley, but I said, you know, I totally get it. And from my experience and from other people's spiritual growth processes, I think the kindest thing that we can do to ourselves is, one, be really gentle through that process, and two, allow ourselves to fall into step with it. Because the more we struggle, the more suffering that actually can be inherent in our spiritual path. And I think sometimes the perception is going to be that it always feels good or easy. And that then when we combine with other people who are embracing spirituality, that it's going to somehow be void of human bias. You know? So I think when we actually start laying out, okay, what are the inherent biases in this, then when people come into contact with them, they can see them from a place of freedom and go, oh, okay, yeah, I know this terrain and I know where to sidestep and to keep moving forward in the direction that that feels essentially divinely orchestrated for me, without getting necessarily caught up in some of the bureaucracy or ego or those kind of traps that can go along within certain groups as well. And I think there's a perception that, well, if everyone's spiritual, that they've already mastered surrendering the ego. You know?
Absolutely. And it's you know, all of what you're saying is, you know, so it, you know, when you're waking up spiritually, there's so much what's the right word for it, so much opportunity for total judgment of yourself, that you're doing it wrong, you know, like, because there's this, that's one of those spiritual traps of, you know, spiritual authority or spiritual superiority, you know, like I know it all, so therefore you're struggling, then you don't know as much as I do, you know, like, and you know, like that can be such a big one in spiritual circles, you know. And as I said, and maybe it's that I've moved out of those things myself, like those particular types of, so I don't know if they're still going on, but they're definitely a level that that you know, can evolve through, is this, you know, like where there's, you know, this superiority is, you know, the hierarchy of who knows what, and I know better than you, and all of those sort of things, you know, like, so it's the judgment that you can have about yourself. When I first woke up myself, and I say it now, one of my biggest advantages is my innocence. I see that as, you know, because I know I don't know, and so I'm constantly curious. But back then, I used to have this thing that, oh, I don't know, and so therefore they, you know, like they know something I don't, and so, you know, you can condemn yourself for not being as easily, you know, on the path or whatever, you know, like my life's not flowing and all that sort of stuff, and yet it's part of the journey. And that's the trap, because as you do that, that's the dichotomy of the whole thing, because it actually creates more resistance to the process as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you mentioned, in that very early stage where there's so much overwhelm, there's a big part of us that is looking for some kind of certainty. And so then it's very easy to look at those further down the path and assume that they have the answers for you. But I think the more you go down the spiritual pathway, you actually recognize that everything I've ever sought, and perhaps I'm currently continuing to seek, everything lies within. And I think that's where the narrative turns around, and not from a place of ego or I'm all knowing, but just from a place of whatever I'm seeking exists within me. And if I'm able to learn the strategies of that inward direction and be at peace with my inner world and know where to draw from your inner world to then actualize the next step of your path, it is actually a solo journey in some respects.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think when we learn that mode of being, and then magnetize other people who also have that mode of being, then we've really got a community of support. And obviously everyone has richness to add, and we also don't want to limit ourselves by going, well, if everything I'm seeking exists within, and become isolated, because it is so much richer when we share. And we're sharing from a place of freedom and sovereignty, rather than sharing from a place of reciprocity, which becomes contractual.
And one of the things you just said there is, instead of coming from ego, is when you have that understanding that everything comes from within, the confidence that like that's there's some self-empowerment that comes from that if in reflection someone else is coming from a place of their mind, they can see it as ego, but actually it's more this wholeness that's come, like this understanding of duality and how to process, like it's really interesting. Another one of the things that came up for me when I was processing this whole spiritual traps is that we always have to be positive. If you're a spiritual person, you've got to be positive, and you can't be angry. Like this rejecting of the angry side of ourselves. And like I've often said to people, I'm really cool and casual and relaxed and flowing, but don't F with me. Like,
I love it. There's a line.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons Awaken the Lioness, right? Because, like I've really strong boundaries, like I'm aware. Another thing, weak boundaries can be part of, spiritual trap, is thinking that you've got to be something to everyone else and then therefore have no real identity of who you are, and strong boundary circle of your own where you can say, yeah, that doesn't really sit with me, and that's okay. I'm just letting you know that, we've got a difference of opinion, or, no, I'm not able to do that today because I need to do some self-care and nurturing today. And that's my truth, like that is spiritual. Whereas a lot of spiritual people, and I, feel that potentially it could be from, lineages and lineages of the healers, which we've talked about before, these healers of, having to be in this poverty mentality because, not having to be in the poverty mentality, more that healers were actually reverence, what's the word for it? They were set apart from everyone else in the community because they were looked after, and they were the wise ones or whatever. And so you come into now, and that being set apart, and that I've got to be here for everyone and give all of my stuff away for free, doesn't work in this structure of society anymore.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
This whole thing of I've got to be positive, I've just got to constantly give, and I dare not be angry, like that's definitely a trap in spirituality, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing how much that idea is perpetuated by spiritual people as well, that there's this notion that if you really care, you will be offering this not just freely, but for free. And there's a difference. There's a difference in offering something freely.
Yes.
I surrender the outcome and I give anyway.
Yeah.
But not I give for free. And I think that slight change in language has actually really confused the concept of a free offering.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that it's free of charge. It means that it's a free offering for you to take or leave as is right for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good twist or shift in the perception, right? Because it's so true. It's actually, as you were talking, I was thinking actually there's almost a gaslighting aspect to that for people that put that onto anyone that's offering, healers or any sort of healing, because healing comes in all sorts of forms, right? So it's really interesting. But also the whole I've got to be constantly positive is really interesting. I have a very, very dear friend. I won't name names, but I've known this guy for several years, maybe coming up to 20. And I see him as like a brother, and so I remember when he separated, like he was brought up in a family of spiritual people, vegetarian, blah blah blah, and constantly like everything, you can't say that because it's not positive, like, so rewording, constantly rewording what he was saying,
Wow.
And then he had a massive trauma with separation and lots of stuff going on there. And I remember saying to him, like, we were processing together, and after a while I remember saying to him, you know what, you just need to get angry. I'd be like totally pissed off if this happened to me. Like, just get angry. This is the way it's going to work. Like, this is the way you're going to heal, is to let that out and be okay with it. I'm not okay with what just happened, And it's a whole thing, like to have that repression of, I've got to behave this way if I'm spiritual, and I can't say anything out of my mouth that might disrupt the field, like it's really very, like, it's so restrictive on your own and energetic form, right?
Absolutely. And that's a great trap. And there's so many layers to what you've actually just highlighted. One is that we are conditioned to positively appraise pleasant emotions and negatively appraise unpleasant emotions, and look at one as virtuous and one as somehow immoral. Then completely cuts our human experience in half and becomes invalidating when we're having an entirely normal emotional response to life. And those emotions are actually gifts, because they become the messages of what's important to me and where do I want to head. Anger is designed to get us to move, be fired up enough about something to make change.
Yeah.
So we're denying that. We're essentially sitting in a boiling pot and going, oh, well, this is my life. And, like, isn't the steam nice? Mate.
That's right.
Get angry, move, like, so it's about actually, there's a big difference in being Pollyanna-ish and actually what's an appraisal that's meaning for me, and then how do I leverage my emotions to my benefit. And I think that's embedded in society, this, like good emotion, bad emotion. There's no such thing as a good emotion and a bad emotion. There's pleasant emotions and uncomfortable emotions. That's fine. And how do we use them or to create a meaningful life? So there's so much there. And it actually reminds me of someone I was working with whose family code was really to hold one another to this exceptional standard, and very much the same thing, that if we're all of this exceptional standard, there's no room for reality and realness, because
absolutely yeah.
And
what a stressful situation to have yourself in, because you're constantly on high alert of what's the perception, what's the judgment, where is that level, am I meeting that, like what a horrible existence that would be.
Exactly. And so then not only do I have this kind of unrelenting standard to continually strive towards, it comes with the fear of rejection from family, like my kin, the ones that are supposed to look after me, if I somehow don't match up. And, everything is a double-edged sword. A high standard is a double-edged sword. Compassion is a double-edged sword if it's not wielded with intention. And I think it's just about recognizing through our conditioning what has been conditioned as a supposedly positive thing and what's been conditioned as a supposedly negative thing, and finding the neutrality in it, so we can always be moving forward with choice rather than a preconditioned idea of how I should or shouldn't be.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were talking, I was actually I was also thinking, you've got to excuse my throat, as I just told you before we got on. I'm moving, as most people know, and I've been full on yesterday on the weekend, doing stuff, and Cully and I watched a movie last night and bawled our eyes out. And so, so it's affected my eyes and my throat and like everything. It was such a beautiful movie, actually. Have you ever seen Autumn Moon?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that it wasn't promoted well, because it's just this stunning, like whoever was the cinematographer, like it's just so well done. Definitely worth everyone on here. You should watch August Moon.
Okay.
August Moon. Yeah, it's really, really beautiful movie. Very spiritual as well. Like it's got a gorgeous ending too. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but anyway. Just as you were talking, I was actually thinking about how, potentially as spirituality became a thing, we started evolving into spirituality more and became more popular, or more people woke up, I suppose would be a better option to say. As you were saying that, I was thinking, I could almost see that there was a rejection of the systems that were already put in place, like psychology and social development and self-development. And so there was almost a rejection of those things, of saying, so that we can be in this beautiful realm, but actually it was the melding of those two that creates the spiritual processes, and the actualization, as you said last week, the self-actualization, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of those processes of delving in and know thyself, is really part of that process of understanding I'm allowed to have these emotional disruptions and dysfunctions and blah, blah, blah. And it means that I'm okay because I can see them, I'm processing them, I'm understanding where they came from, which therefore helps me clear them and release them so that I can move forward in my development as who I am, whether that be a spiritual being or just someone that's, going through life and understanding themselves and their growth, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think if anything, you've just identified the biggest spiritual trap in that because I feel as people who have gone through an awakening at this point in time in history, we do actually have a really big role to play in how we pave a way forward for other people to become more of who they already are and release that conditioning. And when I look back historically about the tension between spiritual groups and kind of mainstream society, it comes down to the rigidity of having to swing the pendulum to an opposing force, right? And then because when we look at those spiritual groups, because they have awakened or developed through a belief system that has bound these certain virtues, and it may be live a life of modesty or whatever it is, that has cut them off from mainstream. When mainstream looks at the alternative of this mode of being that is actually enlightenment and fulfillment, getting my words mixed up, they then reject it because it's too polar opposite what they feel they need. And so I feel in being kind of a modern spiritual entity and time of practice, it's actually about the coming together of to say, you don't have to give up your success. You don't have to give up, the quality of life that you've built for yourself. And equally, these guys over here, they don't have to, reject all reality. It's about going, what works for me and how do I maintain my well-being and self-actualize and become more of that in holding space for the fact that there actually is a place for everything. Everything has its purpose in the sense of one reality only exists because the equal and opposite reality exists. So you can't have one reality without the equal and opposite. So then when we look at it all, we simply go, okay, if everything has its purpose, how do I feel I move in my purpose and hold space for everything? Because not every purpose will serve you all the time. So how do I match my purpose to the purpose of these various realities? And that's when you move through with real intentionality, because now you're using things for their intended purpose rather than being stuck in a purpose.
Absolutely. I love it. Yeah. And I mean, we could go on forever, right? And luckily we're going to extend this as, maybe even 3 parts, because as like some of the things that I can think of with spiritual traps is, thinking that it's our duty to wake others up with, prior to, like pushing people to wake up when it's not, not their time maybe, or another spiritual process that I see a lot of people do is, looking for guidance outside of themselves, like as, guides and all that sort of stuff, instead of taking ownership and sovereignty, as you were saying before, like taking ownership of our life and being the creative force in our life, not externalizing, I can't do that because my guides told me not to, like all that sort of stuff, And so there's just so much to it. So I'm glad we're going to, and I'm sure that Nicolette, as you said, has got her own version and her own beautiful take on it as well. So let's finish it up for part one. What have you got? Anything exciting happening this week, Asha?
This week, what have I got? I think it's more just in flow this week. So I'm meeting with someone who has very kindly offered to do a little write-up for LinkedIn for Light Tower. So I'm meeting him later today, and I'm meeting with an artist who has developed a script that they would like me to have a look at. And so just some creative projects in the mix, which is always a really nice balance. So just little bits and pieces that I get to essentially put some fairy dust on and realize. So that always makes my week really, really enjoyable. So I'm just looking forward to dabbling.
Dabbling, yeah. So I personally, I have no idea what I've got on this week. As in, I don't think I've got anything on, like any events coming up, because I'm moving house. So it's very exciting. I think I get the keys on Wednesday, and I've just had this beautiful flow with everything happening, because I need a fridge, a washing machine, and a lounge. And so I had to get them from different places. And at first it was going to look like it was going to be a major challenge because of COVID, and deliveries, like 4-month delivery, like on some stuff. And then I don't know exactly what happened, but they're all coming on Thursday.
Wow.
It's just like bang, bang, bang. So, and now I've just been told that the transport company can only move all my stuff down on Thursday too. So I'm getting off here and going, okay, how do I be up here and make sure that I'm down there for when the delivery? We'll have to work that out. So, but I'm just keeping my eye on the end results.
Yeah.
So
exciting.
Oh, it is. It's so cool. Carly and I went on Saturday down to the beach and down to Shell Harbour, where I'm staying, and it's a beautiful little quaint beachside area, and I live like 2 minutes from the beach by car. So and just down the road there's like organic shops, and there's superfood cafes, and all sorts of stuff. So I'm like,
Thursday.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm very excited. So yes, I will catch you next Monday, and everyone that's watching, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Loved having everyone on, and if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to ask about spiritual traps, or want to actually share their version of a trap that they found themselves in, or that they've seen other people, would love to have your contribution. That's what this is all about, right? It's conversations that we can all have. So if you've got anything to offer, we would love to see that. So take care. Enjoy the rest of your week, Asha.
Thank you so much. You too. I will be sending lots of positive vibes and lots of energy your way to make sure to do my little contribution to make sure everything runs smoothly as possible. And
thank you.
I cannot wait to see the photos and everything.
It's so cool. I can't wait to go in the bath. You should see the bath. Oh. So nice. Take care, everyone. And because, self-care and nurturing is so important at the moment, right? So
absolutely.
And pleasure, as Helen says, get more pleasure in.
Love that.
Take care, everyone, and I'll catch you next time. We'll see you next week, Asha.
Beautiful. Yes, sounds good.